All right. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are, everybody. I'm Shlomi Katan. I'm the Executive Director of the Adult Literacy X Prize, and I want to welcome you to this peer review webinar for the Communities Competition. We'll be covering the phase and the process of peer review that you'll all be participating. I wanted to start by welcoming you to this webinar and to the competition. Thank you all for registering to compete, for completing your submissions, and for joining us today. We're very excited for the proposals you put forth, and this peer review phase is the first phase in terms of identifying those proposals that hold the most promise. A few logistics about the webinar format. I'll be presenting. We'll start off with a presentation on why we're doing the peer review process and the overview of the phase at all. An explanation of the scoring rubric. We'll run through it relatively quickly, and then take time to familiarize you with the peer review process itself and the use of our platform with which you're already familiar, since it's the same platform that you use to submit your proposals. And then finally, we'll close with some FAQs, questions we've heard before, as well as answer your questions. In order to pose questions, so this is a webinar where you are all muted. What we suggest is using the Q&A feature on the Zoom webinar. So if you hover over your screen, you'll see an icon that's a little box with a Q in it. It says Q&A under it. If you click on that, that will allow you to submit questions, and I'll be able to answer those as they come in. Your other option is to submit them in the chat. And if you do that, we'll be able to get those. You can also raise your hand and potentially ask a question that way, but we really recommend that you use the Q&A feature first. We're also recording the webinar. Not everybody was able to join us at this hour for the live version, so we're recording the webinar and we'll post it on our YouTube channel and share out that link with everybody so everyone has access to this information. We'll also make this deck available in the resources page of the prize operations platform, the POP, where you submitted your proposals. So that's that for logistics, and I wanted to get into the first of these four objectives, or into our agenda rather than these objectives. So we'll start with why are we even doing a peer review, then go through the scoring rubric, walk you through the platform, talk a little bit about timeline and what happens next, and as I mentioned, FAQs and then Q&A. We'll try to end on the hour, being respectful of everybody's time, but we're also available to stick around a little bit later if there are more questions that you feel we haven't answered. We should be able to get through the first part relatively quickly, however. So starting off with, why a peer review? First and foremost is because you're the experts. You work in this field, you work with adult learners day in and day out, and you know what has potential and what does not, and we want to know what you think about your peers' proposals. Second, we believe that a peer review process actually gives everybody involved in the competition a better sense of the scope of possibilities. What others have suggested, it makes you all better, and really one of the primary goals of this competition is to improve our sense of community as an adult education community and share ideas as much as possible. That notion of sharing ideas across organizations and across the country we think is important, because there are ideas that might have taken root in one community, be it urban, suburban, or rural, that have applications in other communities and would otherwise not be able to be shared. So we're looking forward to being a platform for that. Fourth, we believe that a peer review process is important for validating the proposals. Again, as the experts in the field, we think that this is an important means by which to get a sense of which proposals should move on to the judging round amongst the judges. And then importantly, you're helping to select the milestone award winners. So I want to start, we're going to go through the scoring rubric, and so that's it for why a peer review. I want to go through the scoring rubric. You can access the scoring rubric yourselves at xprize.org/prizes/communities/phase1 scoring, or just go to communities.xprize.org. It will take you to our landing page, and over there you can click on phase 1 scoring. That's a tab in the navigation menu, and you'll be able to see that. You can also view the phase 1 scoring rubric in the competition platform. This is the POP, so where you submitted your proposal. And we want you to review that closely. During this presentation, I'm going to go first through it at a high level and then take you through very quickly what the rubric looks like. But as you score, as you go through peer review, we really want you to be paying attention to the scoring rubric. It was developed in conjunction with a lot of feedback from stakeholders in the field of adult education, and we want to make sure that that we're adhering to it and applying it evenly. So there are 5 judging criteria for phase 1. They are impact, innovation, feasibility, scalability, and durability. And of course, as proposals, all of this is about the potential for each. So I'll take you through at a high level what each of these 5 means to us and in the scoring rubric, and then take you through the scoring rubric as well. In terms of impact, the big question that we want you to think about is the proposed approach in that submission likely to increase access to education for a sizable portion of the adult learner population in a given community? And when you think of that, think of the community that is under discussion. So of course, sizable means different things in a large metropolis versus a, say, a consortia of rural communities. And you should take that into consideration. An example you might have heard me give before is that of itself is not a huge number. That is something replicable. And if it's replicable, it has a great potential for impact. So when you think of impact, think of it as a broad set of things that are really contextualized by the community being served, and which of these would work best. An organization that already serves a lot of learners and is looking at how to use these technologies, the apps from the Adult Literacy X Prize, to increase retention, for example, is very impactful. You don't have to necessarily only be reaching out to new learners, although that's something that we want. You can think of it in a very broad way. And so as you are reviewing your peers' proposals, try to contextualize what impact means locally. The second criterion is innovation. And the question there is, does this proposal offer a compelling vision for the use of technology to increase access to adult basic education and English as a second language instruction? Again, that should be contextualized. It can mean the incorporation of apps into the classroom setting. It can also mean reaching adults who otherwise would not be enrolled in classes with these apps as a means to engage them. So think of innovation in that sense, but also think of innovation as how innovative is the approach for recruiting these learners. Is this something that hasn't been tried before, or it's been tried and there's a twist on it? So both in the sense of using the technology per se, as well as taking advantage of the opportunity to use technology to expand the different means through which we reach out to adult learners. The third is feasibility. So we want you to set audacious goals, but they should be achievable. And that should be in the context of the resources the community size, and the experience that the team has. An organization that says that they're going to reach 10,000 new learners, but doesn't have the resources to do so, that's a great idea, but on the feasibility score, you might score them lower. Conversely, if something is too achievable and not audacious enough, that would have gotten the hit earlier along the impact and innovation metrics. So here we're really looking at, are you capable of achieving the goals that you have set? Is the applicant capable of achieving the goals that they have set? And we want you to consider that. Third is scalability. And this is pretty straightforward to some extent, but not in others. Will it scale? And will it scale efficiently and cost effectively? Now, scalability can mean, can you take this thing and can this organization make it scale? Or in the example that I gave before, is it something that is replicable by other organizations as well? And does the organization that has proposed this particular approach have an approach for scaling that method to other organizations as well? So again, think of scalability as something endemic to the proposal itself. Does it make sense in the context of the organization that has proposed it? And does it have the potential to have impact at more than just the local level? Finally, feasibility. Has the team set, oh, sorry, I went up. So this is, again, scalability. The second definition of it is, can this be a model for other communities and organizations? Finally, durability. And durability is important to us, because what we want to understand is this a flash in the pan approach, or something that can last beyond the timeline of the community's competition? And that should become clear in the proposal itself, and you should review proposals with this in mind. Overall, the best proposals are those that are transformative, they are cutting edge, they are audacious yet achievable, they are highly scalable, and they will be enduring. That's what we're looking for. And the scoring rubric indicates that. So we do want you to closely review the scoring rubric so you're familiar with the specifics of each score. And what I'll do now is take you to that and go through a couple aspects of it. So when you look at the scoring rubric, we have the 5 criteria set out. We have the description of each criterion underneath it. And you'll see that while we have the short definitions in the presentation, here we have a broader set of questions for you to consider as you go through. And then when you're looking at the rubric at the scale of scores, each one of those has a definition, right? For example, on the question of impact, it can range from ineffective to transformative. What does that mean? An ineffective proposal will be a solution that will distribute the apps to an insignificant number of learners. It's not likely to greatly increase access to adult basic education or ESL. On the other hand, a 3 would be one where the team proposed an approach that could plausibly provide these apps from the Adult Literacy X Prize, as well as potentially other educational services, to a significant number of adult learners who otherwise would not attain it, while also providing new tools and resources to already enrolled learners in a cost-effective way. So that's good. That's a 3. A 5, on the other hand, is a dramatic increase in access to adult basic education in ESL, where a large number of learners who otherwise would not obtain educational services are reached, and the efficiency with which services and resources are provided is improved. So that's the rubric, and as you go through scoring it, take a look at each of these. We have the same description for innovation. Oh, sorry. I just realized you're seeing the wrong screen. So I'm going to reshare so you can see the right one. So this is where I'm at the link I provided before, xprize.org/prizes/communities/phase 1 scoring. And again, as you go through and as you score these, we encourage you to have this website, this page open so you can read these carefully and apply them. So now I'm going to go back to sharing this. Okay. Now, we know that not everybody scores things the same way. We have different, a different baseline at which we score. Some of us score things high, some of us score things low, generally speaking. We also score in different ranges. Some folks give a 0 or a 5, and some folks will spread their scores across more evenly. So to ensure fairness, we're going to normalize all reviewer scores, both in the peer review process and during the expert judging phase. You can learn more on our website about how we're doing this and the math behind it. But generally speaking, we're going to normalize everybody's scores using the average and the standard deviation of all scores, as well as your individual scores. So we'll bring those in line so that if somebody was met with a review with a few reviewers who are generally harsher or generally more lenient than others, that will be normalized so that everybody's treated fairly. So now, how to peer review. And I'm going to, again, share a different screen with you. And now this is the POP. This is how you submitted your proposals. When you log in, you might land on a different page. You might land here, which is my test team. You might land at the prizes page. Wherever you land, what you should do is up here in this nav menu, go to dashboard. Your dashboard is your individual page, you as an individual registered user of the platform. And what you'll see is that you will have, and this has not been activated for you all yet, but it will be activated later today after the webinar, before noon today, noon Pacific. You'll have the option of either clicking on competitions, and then that's how you will view your team and your submission and the resources, etc., which is a portion of the platform that you're all familiar with already. Or you can click on peer review, and you'll see this little number 1 indicating that you have something to do there. And when you click on this peer review tab, you'll now see this same thing. If you click on the image, it will take you to your team page. So you need to click on Go. Again, if you click on this, it takes you to your team, to the competition page. But if you click on Go, Go will take you to where you need to be. What you'll see then is this page, right? You'll be familiar, you should be familiar with the user interface. And we'll say active judging activities. And you should see a communities competition peer review as the event name with a start date and an end date, okay? The start and end date are not the ones we'll be adhering to, and those will be updated. So ignore the ones that are showing up here. That's the overall judging process. But what you'll see is it will say assigned, completed, status, and action. And the first time you go in, you should be able to click open. Once you've clicked open, what you'll see is this. And right now, we're only showing one test team. This is none of you. This is actually a dummy team. But you will see 5 teams here. Everybody will be assigned 5 proposals to review, you'll see all 5 of those lined up here. For each one of them, you should go through and click Start. You'll see what percentage you've completed, the status, and what score you've given it. When you first get into the peer review, into an individual team, this is what you will see. And I'm going to take you through the different elements of this page. So first, the team materials are here in this box. These numbers that you're seeing align with the activity that you all, the activity number of your submission, right? So number 2 is your, number 1, for example, was a contract. You're not reviewing other people's contracts. You're not going to see that. Likewise, you're not going to see submission number 7, which is the individual marketing material that different organizations submitted. What you will see is the elevator pitch, the video pitch, portions of the who you are section. So we've taken out information that you've shared about the size of your organization, annual budgets, etc. Those are not appearing to the reviewers, nor to the judges. Activity 5, which was what you will do, and scalability and durability. And each of these, when you click on it, will open in a new screen. Right? You'll see that this is a dummy proposal. So this is what you have, and that's the team material section over here in the right margin. You'll see the team name over here, and then the instructions. What we encourage you to do, again, is to open the scoring rubric and have it open alongside you so that you can reference it. While you're able to, as you hover, for example, over these numbers, you'll be able to see what each number means. It's also good practice to have this nearby and be able to read along with it. Then we take you through each step. So first, you'll review the elevator pitch. You don't score the elevator pitch. Second, you'll review the video pitch. This is also something that you do not score. This is to familiarize you with what the team has proposed. These are high level, and they're an introduction to the team and its proposal. You're not going to score these individually. You will consider them when you provide the overall score during the peer review. Number 3 is reviewing activity 4. So you'll open the who you are, read that, and then you score it along 2 criteria. The first is impact, and the second is feasibility. Score these on the 0 to 5 scale, as described before. So this is for who are you? Read that. After you've read that, you score it on these 2 criteria. Then the what will you do section. That gets scored on impact, innovation, and feasibility as well. Finally, not finally yet, this is scalability and durability. This is number 5, and you will review the materials for activity 6 for scalability and durability and score those again on a 0 to 5 scale for those 2 criteria, for scalability and for durability. Finally, you will provide an overall score for the proposal. And that overall score is along all 5 criteria, along impact, innovation, feasibility, scalability, and durability. Once you've done that, do not press submit. If you press submit, you will see a question, are you sure? Why not press submit? When you save, right? So when you click save and then go back to evaluations, now you will have this done, right? So I provided scores of 0s, but I can edit this. Here's why you click save and not submit. If you click submit, that proposal is now closed. You cannot rescore it. When you click save, you're now able to go back in and edit your scores. And this matters. So I'll put in a few scores, Here's a 4, here's a 5, here's a 4, a 3, and a 5, a 5 and a 4, and then 4s across the board. And I click Save. Now, what I will see is when I go back to my evaluations is the score that I've provided for that particular proposal. When you have 5 proposals in front of you, it's important that you click Save so that you can then see the scores overall and make sure that the ranking of the 5 proposals aligns with how you would rank them. And the reason we do this is because we score differently on some days. We have a different attitude because of however we woke up that morning. Or if you're further along into the scoring process, you might change or recalibrate your baseline for what constitutes good versus great. And so we really encourage you to click Save, take a look at these, and have another chance to go over the proposals so that you are submitting scores that align with your overall ranking of the 5 scores that you've provided. Once you have done that, then you can click Submit for each of the 5. So you will need to click Submit for this team as well as Submit for each of the 5 teams. And what you'll see is that while your completion is at 100%, you have your scores, the status will say complete, and the action will not allow you to edit anymore. And you need to make sure that you submit all 5 in that same add-on. So that's the process by which to peer review, and we encourage you to go in and get familiar with the platform. Although this is a platform that you're all already familiar with. Was I sharing the entire time? Going back to our presentation, well, what comes next? So the peer review portal opens today. It will open later in the day. And we ask that you submit your scores by 5 p.m. Pacific on February 1st, 2019. That's a Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and everything in between. The judge's review is going to start Monday, February 11th, so 10 days after the close of the peer review, and continue for 2 work weeks. And then after that process, the milestone awardees will be announced in March. Your referral codes, if you've been asking about those, will be distributed later in February. And April 1 is the start of the deployment phase. You should also know that on February 7th, we are announcing the winners of the Adult Literacy X Prize. Until then, you know who the 5 finalists are, and we'll announce the winners and who has qualified for the community's competition at an event on February 7th. And we encourage you to learn more about that, and you should have received an email from us earlier this week about that. So now we want to move on to your questions. And I wanted to start with a few questions we've gotten in the past. And again, encourage you to use the Q&A feature here on Zoom so that you can submit your questions, or the chat feature as well. So some questions we've heard in the past that are relevant for this stage of for this phase of the competition. First, do you have to win a milestone award in order to compete in phase 2? No. Anybody who completed the requirements of phase 1 is eligible to compete in phase 2 and distribute the apps for free to members of your community, as well as be eligible for the prize, for the phase 2 prize purse. So you do not have to win a phase 1 milestone award. Second question is, are applications blinded? They are not. We've removed sensitive information about your organizations, but we have not blinded the submissions. Why is that? Because context matters, especially for feasibility, and so it didn't make sense to do that. Also, ultimately, these proposals will be public, I use that a little bit in scare quotes, but the idea is that after the close of the competition, we will be sharing these. And so we want people to know what you've accomplished. Another question we've heard is who on our team should do the peer review? That's a great question. It's kind of up to you. We prefer that it be the team lead, but we also understand if you collaborate. The one thing to keep in mind is only the team lead will be the person who will have that peer review tab on POP. So only one person per team will be assigned as the peer reviewer. That will by default be the person who is registered as the team lead for your team. So that's the person who will receive that. If you would like a different person on your team to have that assigned to them, you can contact us and we can transfer that to a different person. Just provide us with their name and email address, but they do need to have a POP account and be a member of your team for us to be able to do that. And again, you can, as a team, do these reviews, but you can only submit one score. How many applications will each reviewer review? 5. And finally, what if I know or am friends with a competitor whose application I am reviewing? The adult education community is a small one. We expect that you will know some of the folks. And so what we ask you to do is be as fair as you possibly can. And be fair in the sense that you would want to be treated. So if it's a great proposal, score it as a great proposal. If it's not, score it as not. Treat everybody the way that you would want to be treated, and recognize that that what we're looking for is those proposals that meet the criteria. Okay, so with that, we can move on to Q&A, and I already see a few questions coming in, and so I'll start with the open ones, and I also see one in the chat window. So starting with this one is quick. What are the milestone awards? Milestone awards are what we're calling the phase 1 awards. So as you know, in phase 1, there's a total of a $500,000 prize purse distributed amongst the winners of phase 1. I sometimes use that phase 1 award interchangeably with milestone award. It's just nomenclature that we sometimes use here at XPRIZE, but it's just the phase 1 awards. So I have a question here. How many total, sorry. Oh, there's a raised hand. Tom, I'll get to your raised hand in 1 second. So first is how many total applications are participating in the peer review process? I believe that means how many applications were submitted. So we had a total of 220 teams, 187 eligible teams, and right now we have 44 proposals that are eligible for review. And we're still going through those to make sure that everybody continues to be eligible. There's a question here, is there a place to add comments? Currently there is not. We will work with our IT team. That's a good suggestion. We will work with our IT team to see if we can add a space in which you can add some comments and feedback as well. It's a good question. So, and then another question, please confirm, because we entered, even if we do not win a milestone award, we will receive referral codes. If so, for how many users? Even if we do not receive a milestone award in phase 1, we can still compete for the app. Yes. So the question is, if you do not get an award in phase 1, will you be able to distribute the apps in phase 2? The answer is yes. You will receive a referral code for having successfully submitted your application in phase 1, and that referral code has unlimited use. The limit on it is time. So it's only available from April 1st to August 31st of this year. But you can distribute it to as many people as possible. That's our goal. Another question, is there a limited time to add team members? No, there is not. The question, I guess, is if you mean adding team members on the prize operations platform, or adding team members to your team. From our perspective, you can add team members to your team however you would like. We don't expect every single team member to be on POP. Sometimes that's not feasible for you as a competitor. Sometimes those are team members that aren't necessarily ones that need to have access to your proposal or to the platform. So, but in terms of adding team members to the platform, you can continue to edit your team information. I do want to take the raised hands. Let me see how I do that. I know Tom raised his hand earlier, so I'm gonna call on him. If I can figure out how to do this. Unfortunately, I cannot. Those of you that are raising your hands, unfortunately, I'm not able to make it possible for you to speak up. So if you could please type your questions either in the chat window or in the Q&A, that would help. Unfortunately, we for some reason can't allow that to happen. So so I'll keep answering the questions that have come in. How do we know if our proposal is eligible for review? If you're on this webinar, if you submitted your proposal and you haven't heard that it is not eligible for review, it is eligible, but you have to have submitted your proposal with every section submitted. Then a few questions here that have to do with the number of applications, and so I'll answer those. Basically, how many we received and how many were submitted. So there were 187 registered teams. Not all those teams submitted an application. Those that submitted an application, if you submitted an application, then you should be amongst those 44. There were a handful more that submitted an application that for whatever reasons, either they were not eligible for one reason or another, were out, but it's a very small number, and those folks have heard from us. So there are 44 proposals that are being reviewed. So I think Tom, I think I answered your question. And another one, how did the number of applications go from 187? So it's the number of teams. There were 187 teams. Not everybody submitted an application. There was no filtering process other than basic eligibility requirement, which had to do with being a US-based entity and submitting all parts of the application. So that's how we get to the 44. So are only the 44 teams in the, so there's another question, are only the 44 teams in the peer review process eligible for the phase 1 prize? That is correct. And then, so is everyone a winner? That's a good question. We are looking into a fair and equitable way to address that aspect of the competition in full transparency. It's still an open question, and you know, we want to be fair to the applicants. We also want to be fair to the field, and not award applications that don't merit an award. In terms of what that split looks like going forward, we're going to continue to look into it, but you at a minimum, there still should be a $10,000 award for those applications that are after the peer review and judging process deemed to merit those milestone awards. I see that there's a chat question. So similar question, weren't 50 teams getting 10,000? So the phrasing is up to 50 teams. We're going to split the prize purse. You know, we want to be fair to the applicants, but if there's an application that clearly is not meritorious, then we also can't award that. And so that is why we are still going through the peer review and the judging process to make sure that the selection of the phase 1 winners is on the up and up. There's a question here. The funding in phase 1 is to be used towards implementing our proposal. No, it does not have to be. The funding in phase 1 is an award. Unlike a traditional grant, there are no strings attached to it. Obviously, we would prefer that you use it towards implementing your proposal, but the only restriction that we have placed on the phase 1 award is that it be used to benefit adult learners, and that's true for phase 1 as well as phase 2. You don't have to use the phase 1 award to implement the proposal that you put forth, but you should and you do have to use it to benefit adult learners. Okay. Are there other questions? Okay, so just a reminder of the competition process. Right now we are in part 4. This is the peer review stage. Then it will go up to the expert review stage, the milestone award. Then you are preparing for deployment. You'll distribute the apps between April 1st and August 31st, and then the judging and awarding will take place. This is the overall competition timeline, as a reminder. And again, to go to what comes next, we ask that you submit your scores by February 1st at 5 p.m. Pacific. The judges' review will happen after that. Milestone awardees will be announced in March, and you'll be receiving your referral codes in February ahead of distribution on April 1st. I did see a couple more questions come in. So there's a question here, beside peer review, is there nothing else for the communities team to do, like the business plan? So actually, you should be using this period to prepare for deployment in April. What does that mean? Depending on what your plans are for the deployment phase from April 1st to August 31st, 2019, you should be starting to implement those plans. So whatever marketing activities you need to start getting in place, whatever infrastructure you need to build, whatever team training you need to do, however you're getting the word out, you should start planning for that and start to implement it during this period. Obviously, different organizations have different specific timelines for how they intend to do that, but you have this time to do that. The other thing that you can do during this time is become more familiar with the apps. We encourage you to do that because it will make you better advocates for the apps and better able to answer participants' questions if they ask you about which app is best for them. One question we've been asked before is, how many of the apps can I distribute? You can distribute all the ones that are eligible, or just one, or a combination of them. What will get counted as far as phase 2 of the competition, what gets counted as download and use, is the individual user, and that individual user logging into at least one of the apps on at least 3 separate days. But you can make the call based on your learners, which of the apps that are eligible for deployment in the communities competition are the ones that are best for your learners, which are the ones that you think are the best fit or the easiest for them to use or will be the most effective. And that's a call that you should make for your community. And so we encourage you to take these next couple of months to get familiar with those as well. And then there's another question here. Will we see an entire list of all teams prior to the April 1 deployment? I presume this, so I take this to mean 2 possible things just because of the way we use the word teams here at XPRIZE. Both the teams from the Adult Literacy XPRIZE that developed the app, as well as the teams competing in the communities competition. And so the teams that are in the Adult Literacy XPRIZE that developed the apps, you will find out who the winners are of that phase of the competition on February 7th. And those are out of the 5 finalists that are currently viewable on the Adult Literacy XPRIZE website. As far as the teams in the communities competition, that is information that is currently available on POP just with team name, and our website will be updated after February 7th. The communities competition website will be updated after February 7th to include some information on all of the teams that are competing in phase 1 with the number of teams that's feasible. And so there will be a way to view those as well. You won't be able to view everybody's proposals. You will only be able to view the proposals of those teams that you are peer reviewing. Another question, can I confirm that usage is not counted as from a separate individual if on the same computer? This is a challenge for computer rooms, libraries, tech centers. Right, so the way that the deployment, the way that phase 2 works is that what we are able to track is usage on individual devices. We are not able to track individual users on the same device. A large part of that has to do with the intent of what we were asking teams to develop. We wanted teams to develop something that individuals can use anytime, anywhere on mobile devices. So those that are being used on devices that don't belong to that specific individual, we understand sometimes pose challenges. But unfortunately, we have no way of tracking those as individual users. Another question, will we eventually be able to see our own application score and peer reviewer feedback if that feature also gets implemented in POP? Good question. If we implement the feedback, then we will probably allow the reviewer to determine whether or not they want you to see the feedback that they are providing. And if so, you will be able to see that. As far as the scores, I have to check with our IT team if that feature is possible. The one thing you will see is in phase 2, you will get reports on the number of downloads that you are producing and the number of users from amongst those who downloaded who have logged in on at least 3 separate occasions. I have a question here. Can you send out a link to all the apps that are eligible so that we can become more familiar with those, or are they all listed and described on the website? So they are on the Adult Literacy XPRIZE website. We will, in our next communication with you, as well as the email we will send out as a follow-up to this webinar with the link to the recording of the webinar, we will in that include a link to that page, and you can review all 5 of the finalists ahead of February 7th, and after February 7th, you'll have more information on which of those are the ones that are eligible for the communities competition, which ones have won. Elena here is asking, is hoping to find a workaround for the limitation that we have on being able to track only individual devices. That I hope so. I don't know that cookies will help. It has to do with the unique device ID. But if you do find a workaround, please let us know and let other competitors know as well, because we do recognize that that is one of the important ways that adult learners have access to technology is through libraries and through learning centers where they go. And then another question, the app that wins in February is the app that community competition competitors will be using in the community. That is correct. The apps that are, so there are 2 levels here, but essentially from the communities team's perspective, it's which apps qualified for distribution in the communities competition. What that means is that those apps in our field test had to produce a minimum, had to produce an average score gain amongst their assigned participants that was in excess of a minimum threshold that was set to be approximately the equivalent of 1 educational functioning level. To put it in clearer terms, they basically had to exceed what learners in that in our comparison group were able to attain without using the apps. This is not a randomized control trial, to be clear. This is a competition and a field test. It wasn't academic research. We wouldn't do 8 interventions for academic research, but instead what we have is a comparison group of learners enrolled in adult education classes, as well as learners who are not. And we have test scores for those people who are not using the apps. So if you have people who are enrolled in adult education classes and not using the apps, that became the threshold that teams had to exceed in order to be eligible for the communities competition. They had to at least meet it. The reason for that is we don't want ineffective products being rolled out in the communities competition. So all of these have, through our field test, proven, or not proven, but all of these through our field test have demonstrated a level of effectiveness that makes us and our judges feel comfortable in terms of rolling them out through the communities competition. Another question here, will the field test data be available to use for promotional reasons? So we will be releasing some information. We won't be releasing data from the field test, but you will have information in our press releases and on our website that is useful for promotional reasons, for promotional use, that will describe what the teams accomplished in our field testing. So we are about 3 minutes ahead of 10 a.m. Pacific, and I again am happy to stay on the line and answer some more questions as they come in. Again, using the chat or Q&A features here on Zoom. If there are no more questions right now, but you do have questions later, please feel free to email us to adult.literacy@xprize.org. We're happy to answer any questions that you have. And you will receive a notice from us. You will receive a notice from us that you will have that you are able to access the peer review feature on POP. You'll receive that as an email directly from the POP platform. So keep a lookout for that. And again, we'll follow up with an email with a link to the recording of this webinar. And then I see another question here that just got asked that I believe is about what was and what information was and was not included in a specific team's application. So at this point, the application is closed. You can't include any further information in that application, unfortunately, because the deadline has passed. You can, however, if you are concerned, you can review what you submitted. So you can take a look at what you submitted to see if you included all the information that you wanted to include. Oh, another question has come in. Thank you. Glad that this was informative and helpful to you all. And please reach out to us if you have any other questions. We're always happy to answer them. And we look forward to a great peer review process and judging of phase 1 leading into phase 2. And please stay abreast of the announcement of the winners of the Adult Literacy X Prize team stage this coming February 7th. It's a Thursday. So thank you again. Have a great Thursday and a great rest of your week and a great weekend. And thank you again for joining us.